Top of the morning, Sir John. This is supposed to be a week of celebrations. Cup match is just around the corner, and about 48 hours around this time, the first bowl will be bowled. Happy cup match to you, sir.
Thank you. And to you the same. I mean, it's a very special time of the year when we should be celebrating all the things that mean something good to us, because cup match is supposed to be our period of celebration. Not only just emancipation, but how we conduct ourselves all year round. I'm afraid that we've been plagued by tragedies that none of us want to see. And it deeply concerns me, because when a mother or a father or a brother or a sister or anybody in the community sees the demise of someone by way of the conditions that are premature in determining a person's normal life, then it's very sad. And that's what we're seeing in Bermuda happen over and over again. So as we celebrate a cup match, we must be mindful that somehow or the other we need to do something about what's going on in Bermuda. There's something fundamentally wrong with what's going on in Bermuda.
Yet another female shot. This individual, young, between 4 to 5 gunshot wounds she received. How do we get a handle? How do we stamp this out?
Well, I think that, this is not an overnight cure. It doesn't just creep up on us overnight. Mm-hmm. I think we've got to go back and dig deep and find out what is causing this. Now, we know that there's a lot of stress because of financial conditions in Bermuda. People having problems paying their bills, people using alternative means of getting money and owing money to other people rather than institutions. I think this puts a danger into people's lives. So we have to rekindle Bermuda into a market economy that allows people to benefit from what's going on in Bermuda, as opposed to the adverse effect. We're going to have the conditions that will make them feel as though they can go out and get a hustle, or go out and get some money because they get a job and so forth. But the jobs have been diminished considerably, whether we like it or not. And then a lot of the employers prefer non-Bermudians over Bermudians because they want to feel that they can depend on them more. But at the end of the day, these Bermudians are our children and our grandchildren, and the mothers and fathers of children who need to be also cared for. And I think that there's a tendency to, on probably a bit of a lax policy or lax position, is Bermudians are getting left out of the process.
A sense of hopelessness is for our young people are going through. A young black man, they can't find job. The job statistics and job unemployment for our young people between the ages of 18 to 30 is extremely high.
Yes.
So a sense of hopelessness is
well, there's two things happening. One is
some of these individuals are going through.
One is the fact that people coming out from incarceration, the minute they get a record, whether it's something minor or major, and that goes back in the history of Bermuda. It's hard, once the people see that they've got a police record, it's hard to get a job. This is not like the United States where you can go to the next state, or England, you can go to the next county and find work. And here in Bermuda, everybody knows everybody. And the first thing somebody hires somebody, and they say, oh, well, that person went to jail, that person did so-and-so. So there's a lot of hidden personalities, and this stress is catching up because we tend to be very judgmental and not be considerate of the circumstance of the individual, particularly when we know that we can go out and get a work permit to get somebody else in to do the job. We just got to look at this whole thing and look at in a holistic way about Bermuda, and look at the stats and look at everything else, and how we can help these young people to make these adjustments, and how we need to adjust the economy so that they can make the adjustments, not just look at them, but also look at the economy, how it can make adjustments. And, you know, we once had some construction. There's no more construction as such. If you do, you hire a contractor and bring in foreign labor. You hire you have jobs being done, cleaning jobs and so forth. Everybody is bringing in labor. And the Bermudan is sitting around walking the streets and seeing all this happening. And the only way he can get money now is he's got to get involved with drugs, stealing, taking, and threatening. And yet he sees his parents faced with the threat of not enough money to buy food, not enough money to buy medicine, not enough money to pay rents. Rents are high. All these things are high cost. And so the frustration is in the house, and it spreads out into the community. So I'm not looking and being prepared to pass judgment and saying, no, nobody should take anybody's life. I agree with you. But I'm also recognizing that there's a lot of frustration out there that needs to be addressed. And we've got to bring the people who are responsible for Bermuda, run Bermuda, the people who create jobs, the people who are in industry, we've got to bring them to the table, and we've got to look for a common solution to Bermuda's issue. If not, it will spill over into their lives also. Don't think that because you are sitting home comfortably and watching your TV and having a nice meal and having a glass of wine, and you get up, go to bed at night, you get up the next morning, you can go to work and you feel comfortable. Eventually, these things creep into, particularly with 19 or 20 square miles with 60,000 people, almost 5,000 or 3,000 people per square mile. You know, you can't avoid bouncing up inside of each other or being with each other. And then we've got kids and so forth. So we have to start looking for a collective decision. And we can't sit on top of the pile and say, it's not me. It is you. We can't say, this is what is happening and I can do nothing about it. You can do something about it. First of all, we've got to start talking about it. Second of all, we've got to have a conversation about how we can solve the problem. We might not have the answers, but the answers will come when others help us to find the answers, instead of just completely living in isolation. But when I go out, I see people, they're having a wonderful time. They feel as though Bermuda's an ideal, the climate's good, place is clean, the people speak to you nicely. You know, that's fine. But then there are people, even that are hurting, speak to you nicely. But they still got to go home and face the reality. They might even be working for you, but they got to still go home and face paying rent that they can't afford to pay, food bills they can't afford to pay for, and medical bills they can't afford to pay for. And we're just simply saying, well, that's okay. It's not okay. We've got to find a solution to it. And if I have anything to do with it, I will find a solution, because I can't talk to the powers that be at the moment. But I can tell you one thing. I think I know where the answers rest. And the answer is, it's some business decisions, and some human decisions, and some corrective positions that need to be taken. And what it is you can satisfy all those that have. You know, you can satisfy them some of the time, but you must not try to satisfy them all the time. And those who don't have, you can't satisfy them all the time. But at the same time, you can't neglect them either about their problems. So we need to really look for solutions and have the nerve and the fortitude to implement them. And that's not what's happening.
So, John, do you think we need outside help? Outside intervention, outside help to
I think,
get
quite
on top
frank
of-
with you, what we need to have is a sensitivity about policies that are going to recognize that we have a problem. We don't have policies that recognize we have a problem. We don't have the, you know, we keep talking about law and order and obeying the law and all that type of stuff. What we need is to recognize these are human problems. These are people who don't want to have problems. These are people who don't want to commit crimes. But they're being led down that path by the very basic success that we have that puts in inflation. And they're not part of the inflationary process. They're part of the effects that inflation brings on to them. And that is what we need to address. And this is not a black problem. This is not a white problem. This is a national problem that affects everybody across the spectrum. So I'm not looking to go outside now and say, bring in experts in. We know what the problem is. We know
I'm
it's
not
food.
saying experts. I'm talking about.
We know it's food costs. We know it's medical costs. We know it's rent costs. We know rent related to construction. We haven't built any new housing and so forth. There's a solution to that, but if the government isn't talking to the public isn't talking to the government. They only see the problems as they see them, as opposed to there are solutions out there. People have been doing research and everything else. We got to have a public conversation as to how we solve these, and they can be solved. We solved them once before. When I came to office, we had the same problems. Same problems. People are sleeping in cars and in tunnels and Pembroke Marsh and everything else. We moved all those people from those conditions, right? We had health issues around Bermuda. We had mosquito issues around Bermuda. We dealt with them because we looked at them and said, how do we deal with them? And we got the community involved with the problem, whether it was the Salvation Army, whether it was when we did the West End Development Corporation in terms of getting something done at the West End and dockyard and so forth. And when we closed the bases to East End. But, you know, we had a plan, and it worked. I don't see a plan now. You can't just simply say, I'm going to hand you some money. Or you got to help. You can't pay your rent, so I'm going to give you a couple of thousand. I'll give you a couple of dollars to add to your rent. That's not the problem. We need to have the statistics. We haven't had a census. We need to have statistics. We need to have a demographic study. We need to have it so that we know exactly where people are and what the needs are. And then we need to go about solving those problems. And if it means competition, we've let everything in Bermuda go to the hands of the foreigners, except for groceries, pharmacies, healthcare. And in fact, healthcare now is in the hands of the foreigner because your insurance companies and your pharmacies, some of your pharmacies, and your doctors now are also in the hands of the foreigners. So we need to sort of rein this thing in. If not, everybody's getting into their business because that's the business to be in. I've never seen a country where 50,000 people have so many pharmacists in my life. There must be a lot of money into it. Think about it. Everywhere you go, there's a pharmacy. Everywhere you go, there must be. The grocery business, it's too expensive. You can't. Now, how do we solve the problem? You know what the problem is. It's bloody competition. Yeah. You can't just simply say, oh, by the way, we can do nothing about it. It's too bad. Go home and be hungry. Let your health deteriorate because you can't feed yourself properly. Don't get your medicine so your diabetes affects you and you get miserable. Then you got your grandchildren living with you. You got your children living with you. And they're miserable also because they see your misery. That's what we've got to take and address in Bermuda. And we're too small, we're too intimate, and we're too basically overburdened with these issues that we have to now relieve some of this pressure. Yep. So I don't know what happened the other night or what's happened with these other murders, these young people. I'm not sitting in judgment of that. But I bet you any money, if you go back and you trace it back, you'll see it's related to economic conditions that people have.
So I'm going to ask you the same question in a whole different way. We have an element in our society that has no regards for authority, law, or life. They are now taking life. Females now in the element. Parents are now in the element. how do we arrest this situation? My question again,
Well, that's what
do we need outside intervention? Because we need to stop this first.
Well, to stop it, we've got to define what it is that
Police need about another 120 police
Yeah, we've
in
cut
the
the
service.
police. We've cut the police down to a minimum.
800.
We've cut other services
300
down
60 something.
to a minimum.
Where it used to be 480,
No,
490,
450.
450. So we
Yeah.
cut them by about 80 to close to 100 officers.
Well, you know, if you have, let's say you have 320 now. That means the fact that four shifts, because you have 3 shifts, 8-hour shifts, and then you have 1 8-hour shift that you allow for vacations, sickness and everything else. So you have 4. Divide that by 3. Divide 320 by 4. You got 80 policemen on, not just policemen on cars and bicycles and
Water,
on the beat, but all the administration, all the investigation, all the detectives. You don't have enough. You know, you're blaming the police, but the police can only do so much. And they're making the best of what they do, and they're under a lot of stress because they've got more work to do than there's ability to do because they don't have the manpower to do it. I don't know what's going on in the DDP's office. You know, people keep talking about there should have been more prosecutions out there, but I don't know whether their finances have been cut short. I don't know what's going on in the Attorney General's office. We don't even know what the pension value is of Bermuda. We don't know, what we can expect in the future. We don't have any demographic valuations of the pension where an actuary looks at it and says, by the way, this is what it is today, and this is what we can expect based upon the amount of people that will expect to age and draw from it and so forth. We're living too much on the edge. So our young people are living too much on the edge also. So the old people living on the edge and young people living on the edge.
Those in the middle are just surviving.
We don't
those in the
have
middle
to
are
go
just surviving.
outside to solve our problems. What we've got to do is recognize we've got a problem. Now, if we need to bring somebody in, well, we can't just make these general statements saying, "Oh, just go find somebody to solve the problem." We got to recognize the problem, and anybody with any brains and intellect will know the fact that you got to get the stats right, and then you got to look for some real solutions, and not just whitewash over them by saying, "Okay, we'll just hand you out some money and make you feel that everything is going to be okay," because it's not going to be okay. But for the moment, it's okay because it looks good, it feels good, but it doesn't cure the sickness that we have.
Today we have a National Day of Mourning and Prayer, and mourning. Your thoughts on that, sir? Sir John?
Well, we have a National Day of Mourning. Seems like we should have a National Day of Mourning every day. Mourning for what? For those who've died. But for those who are living, who also are hurting and, will die if they're not properly cared for. Again, we're celebrating the passing of people. And rightfully, we should try to recognize the lives or the contribution they've made. But we got people who hadn't had time to make a contribution. They're gone. So right now I feel very hurt that this is not the Bermuda that we knew before. I've been around for a fair amount of time. I've seen this country feel good. I feel this country feel proud. And the pride has been stripped away from us. And now we're just simply saying we're here because we have to be here. Unless you go to England or go somewhere else, you have to be here. And enough people exiting the country to go and live in England. But one time we thought, oh shit, you're walking backwards. You're going to England to live versus Bermuda. But now if you can't live in Bermuda, you got to go to England. or you got to go to the Caribbean.
where you're making next to nothing. Because I just spoke to a young lady just yesterday that said that she's been back in Bermuda after being overseas for a few years, 4 years, and she's been back for 3 months, and she's made more money in 3 months than she's made in 1 year in England. So the salaries out in England
The salaries are in England, but you get education,
no,
you get rent subsidies, you get
young
benefits.
children, you get taken care of.
So if you got a job that's not paying you much, you get enough money to pay for your food. Now you're on socialized medicine, and you get sick. That's a different story, because then you got to wait. But now we got a hospital in the same predicament. Now people are having to wait more longer. The waiting period is increasing, and now you got these two insurance companies going together. And how much they're going to contribute towards now deciding how much they're co-paying. You got to start. People have to start co-paying. So they go in. They got insurance. You're told you got health insurance, but when you go to the doctor or go to the hospital, then they send you a bill for co-payment, and you don't have the money to pay the co-payment. What happens? Maybe government should have an insurance for co-payment, because people can't afford a co-payment.
When does a leader take responsibility for the overall everything that's going on?
Well, it's not a leader.
If you were the premier, wouldn't you say the buck? If you were the premier, I would say the buck stops at you, Sir John. When do you take responsibility for what's going on in Bermuda after being in power for 7 years?
Well, it's a system. The system of accountability, the system of when you feel like you're carrying out your party's mandate, and you're defending your party, defending the weakness, and you feel good about the strengths of your party, but you're defending the weakness of your system itself, and you're trying to sort of find a way in which you can get the public to accept it. Unfortunately, the public is not buying into it anymore like they did before. They feel disillusioned by it, and not only in Bermuda, but also in England. Look what's happening in England, and look what's happening in America. Doesn't mean Bermuda shouldn't try to do something about it, and that's what I've brought into the picture. I've very much been involved with politics over a lot of years. I've been watching politics in England and France and America, and they all seem to have bumped up against each other, bumping each other's heads, and a lot of noise, but no results. A lot of noise, no results. And I've said, well, maybe what we need to do is to have a system by which, instead of the individual listening to the party system and trying to promote the party and feeling as though it's doing its job by making sure the party stays in power, is the individual. So there's no such thing as the party staying in power. It's about the individual gets elected, is given a job, and they have to do the job that they've been elected for, and that they take instructions from their constituencies as opposed to taking it from the party hierarchy. That's a system that I think in the 21st century, particularly with technology and with blockchain and everything else, you can evolve a system by which there's transparency, accountability, and far more effect on the lives of people, because they participate in the process and they know what's going on, because the knowledge is then disseminated to them, because it comes from the people to the people as opposed to coming from the party to the people. We know the party system isn't working. The people will have to account to the people. You're elected, you sit on these committees, and we are more embracing, because instead of using people around you that just support the party, you bring in people from the private sector, both the international sector and the private sector and the civil servants, to sit around the table together to address these issues. So you are more inclusive in the process. And that when you're more inclusive in the process, you're able then to see the problems in a much more clinical way and try to sort of then deal with them, but also more brain power is used and more facilitation, whether it's support by the international business that makes up 90% of our, or more than 90% of our US dollar earnings, and they are the big elephant in the room, and they can say, yeah, I see the problem now. Here's how we can deal with it. Here's how we can contribute to it. But as long as you keep them out of the mix, how can you keep all the people that earn all the money out of the mix of making political decisions? You can't. Doesn't mean, in fact, they vote, but once you've elected, you can ask them to come in. Now, when you talk about bringing in foreigners, we don't have to bring them from overseas. These people live in Bermuda. They got children going to school here. They live in our society. They know what's going on, but we've told them, no, you can't get involved with anything to do with politics. I think it's fun, and except for unless you are a few select friends of ours, you can get involved. That's wrong. That's why I'm saying this system of the individuals can be far more inclusive, far more embracing, far more directed by what is the cardinal process of running a good operation, and accountability both to the people that spend the money and the people that receive the money.
Cup matches upon us. Before I go there, it sounds like you answered my next question just now. So you just gave one way of a solution to address where we're at. Pastor John, if you had the opportunity to share with our young people, our young man, what might you say to them?
Well, a young man, I was once young myself. I can't forget I was young. I could have been a troublemaker. I saw a lot of my friends being troublemakers. My parents helped me a lot to stay on the track. I would say to young men and young women, try to embrace your parents, try to help them. Try to sort of communicate better with the political system that's there to help you, so that you become a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. I think that we just have convinced them that they are on the outside. They're isolated. They are a scourge on society. We've done a hell of a great job. 25, 30 years ago, when I said that we're doing this to the young male, people criticized, and then they realized I had a point I was making, that if we keep this up, we'll see the results in the years to come, and now we're living with those results. We can reverse that. There are people living in the world, whether they're living in the Middle East, or whether they're living in Asia, or whether they're living wherever they're living in America, who don't have means and who are suffering, hurting. But they still believe in the greater good because society itself represents the greater good. What we've done is we've convinced people that the society itself doesn't represent the greater good. And therefore there's nowhere to turn to. When you lose it's like, you go to church on a Sunday, you turn to the preacher, but more importantly, you turn to Almighty God and you say, God, help me. Right? Now, God isn't physically present, but the Spirit and the ideas and the ideals that He represents help you to look at your own issues and gives you a sense that you can do something about them. Because you feel as though His Spirit is a part of the goodness of you. What we've done is we've taken that goodness away. We've just taken it away.
Dismantle, taking another schools.
And the end result, and what it is, it's about relationships. It's about how you have relationships. You go to church because you want to have a relationship with your God, not with the preacher. You want to have a relationship with your God. You go into Bermuda, do you want to have a relationship now with your political leaders? The answer is no. So who do you have a relationship with? You have a relationship with people who are your reference in the community. Unfortunately, if they're doing something that's untoward, then you become involved with that untoward activity. And it damages you And then you become an example of the next generation that continues, that perpetuates that process. So I would say the fact that we've got to get back to where we look up to our leaders. You know, when I grew up, we looked up to our leaders. We looked up to our seniors in the community. When we did something that was not doing right, we were conscious that our seniors were watching us. And even if our own young people saw us doing something wrong, they'd go home and tell their parents, who then would tell our parents. Nowadays, we feel threatened that if we do something that's good, that we will be punished for it because we will be revealing something that we shouldn't reveal. So we've got to remove the punishment for doing good and address the whole issue that there is a reward for doing good because you are doing good because there's a greater good that you have a relationship with. And we don't have that with our society today. So when you ask me about the young people, they don't want to do what they're doing. They're doing it because we've almost driven them to do it, and then we blame them for it. We've got to take responsibility and try to help them to solve the problem. And by the way, you know, there are adults who are doing things too, but we don't hear much about them because we push that under the carpet. They're just more subtle with it, that's all, because they know what the consequences of doing something. So it isn't that only young people are doing it. Adults are doing it, but they're doing it in a different fashion. If you deprive me of right to eat, to sleep, to have a healthy life, to get a proper education, if you deprive me of those things, then you can't expect for me then to treat you or act normal under any circumstances. And therein lies the basic problem that we have is that deprivation is a scourge that we've got to remove. And that's why we want to build a more inclusive society, do more housing, do something about the healthcare issue, do something about the grocery cost, do something about people's attitude about society. You know, Holy Communion and the ascension of the human being and his spiritual process of rising up wasn't created just because somebody had an idea. It was created because these were the ideals of society, of people, of how we exist and coexist. And we basically have torn those things apart. And we need to get back into them again and be able to talk about them. Today people walk by churches and they see them as just physical monuments. They don't see them as a place that really they can go into and find
a place of refuge.
Comfort, refuge, that people need to be able to, meditate more. And they need to be able to feel like somehow or the other there's a greater good, and therefore I can take the pain of suffering. But when the greater good is stripped from you, and the pain is the only thing, is raw pain, and it's enduring, then you feel as though, well, I can do anything wrong because pain can't get any worse. And that's what we're going through right now. Not only in Bermuda, but in America, in England. But in small little Bermuda, it shouldn't happen. And we've let down our brothers and our sisters. Are we our brother's keeper? That we should be, but we've neglected that.
48 Hours Cup match as we started this program. We got cup match festivities. As a matter of fact, it starts tomorrow night. We got 4 or 5 days of celebrations. All week, the average worker has kind of gone into the mindset of getting through the day. Your team is, some said, I would say.
What's that?
Your team?
I don't have a team.
You got a team, Sir John?
I have always, everyone will tell you the fact that I've always been supporter of the best man. May the best man win. I try to encourage everybody. I try to encourage them to go out and do the best they can. and that, you know, I'm proud if they play a fair game, keep it clean, give the public some good entertainment in the process, and produce the excitement, and let people tend to forget the miseries and the issues that they have, and just let them just relax. And I walk around, and I'll be walking around both days of Cup match.
Coming up.
In Somerset, I'll be walking around both days.
Okay.
Talking to people, encouraging people. And if they want something to say to me, they can say it, and so forth. I don't go sit up in the
Camp.
VIP camp. I just go around, spend my time around
Amongst the people.
amongst the people. Because, and I've been doing that for years, many, many years, you know. And I just find it to be you get an honest assessment of what's going on. People tend to pull you aside and talk to you. People tend to sort of let you know how they feel. And I can tell you, sometimes some people disagree with me. They tell me too. So it's not just agreement, but sometimes it's disagreement. You know, and which I want to know. I want to know what I'm doing wrong also. I mean, you know, I want to know, you know, if you think that I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing, I expect to get you to tell me, be honest with me, as much as I'm going to be honest with you. You know, it's, and I think once we build a brotherhood of trust amongst each other, then we can feel as though that we can look after each other, look out for each other, and that we can take the criticism that's out there. Then we are maturing enough that we can start solving the problems ourselves. I think Bermuda can solve its problems, quite frankly. I don't think it's a big, insurmountable problem. I just think we've got to, first of all, address it and build those relationships that are essential to address it. So we do it together, not in isolation. That's why I don't like that's why I don't like party politics anymore, because it just tends to sort of isolate people too much.
Good stuff. When we come back after this holiday is done, we're going to start focusing on the independent direction that you're trying to implement.
We've got probably about 20 odd people right now who are committed. We're going to get another 16 people, we've got some people out there who are just trying to make up their minds and so forth. But probably by September, we will have the whole contingency group ready to move. Some very good people. We've been moving slow but steady in the process. You know, when you can't use civil servants, you can't use people from the international sector. There's a very small pool you can draw from. So it's not like we're in the States, we have law firms. Our law firms are international now, and they don't want to get involved with politics. Our accounting firms are international. They don't want to get involved with politics. Our communication firms and so forth don't want to get involved with politics. And the international firms, so you don't have, by the time you take out the civil service, you don't have a lot of people to draw from in the community to be politicians. I mean, I think we have done ourselves in, and the fact that we have allowed Bermuda to become so international and so polarized internationally that the system that serves the greater good of the country has the least to draw from. That's the danger I see, and I'm not here to say that, you know, I'd like to change it. I'd like to say that we want to embrace, but we got to convince the international people now that it's a good thing to happen. And the only way we can do that is by inviting them to come to our table and sit down and talk to us. But as long as we've kept them isolated, they feel as though that now they want to remain isolated. They worry about, if I get involved with politics and the government changes, I might lose my work permits, or if the government stays the same, I might lose my work permits, or I might not, you know, get involved with some type of controversy. You're part of this community here. This You live here, you bring your children here, you kids go to school here, you know, you represent the bulk of our financial income. Why should you not be included in some say in what's going on? And so you've left the burden to a very, very small little pool of people that's available. And you can see how that pool gets smaller and smaller as the population shrinks. And as you look at most of the people in politics, a lot of them in politics, don't have second jobs. So we have to start now looking and saying, how do we make our political system work? When I was there, at least people had second jobs, you know, and they, but when they went to cabinet, they had to concentrate on getting the cabinet job done and so forth. I ran my company when I was Minister of Home Affairs. I still oversaw my company. Sure, I stepped aside once I became Premier. I stepped aside. But my company was then, you know, in a position where it was supposed to run. And it took its licks. I mean, by the time I came out of politics, the company was in bad shape. I had to redesign it and redo it. But the fact of the matter is, today it's a very strong company. You know, it's been going now for 62 years, and I took my management skills from government and put it back into my company. Okay. And that's where it's going.
I remember your lingo. Your lingo, John W. Swan, with satisfaction never ends. I remember that. I'll never forget it.
Where service begins and satisfaction
never ends. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. I never forget it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, we've done a lot of things in savings and loans and building of houses and things of that type. And I want to apply some of those skills back into the Bermuda system itself as a society. You know, we've lost our savings and loans. I don't know what the credit union is doing anymore, but we don't have any. We've got some banks now that are not loaning to local people very much. So how do you have a society that's deprived so much of so much and still expected to function? That's the reality of it, and that's what worries me. You know, we got to get back to some vitality back in the system itself, and there are some ways we can do that, and that's what I'm proposed to do.
It sounds like we need a couple of roundtable discussions to bring in some of the like-minded people so we can.
Well, you can't do it by yourself.
No,
you can't do it by yourself.
So it's coming down the pipeline. I've just put an invite for you.
Well, you know,
we can pull that off.
We want to pull it in so that if we look back over a 10-year period, next 10 years. Now, will I be there? The chances are no. But I hope I will train people, change the system, get it going, and bow out very quickly. But leave the critical mass of the system going enough that is able to sort of carry itself and not fall back into disrepair. I mean, we did it once before. In fact, by 1985, I was still in office. 1995, I was still in office. We were listed as the richest country in the world. I want us to go back to being the richest country in the world. And where the locals had a lot of stake in Bermuda. And that's been depleted. I think we can get back into that area and get them back into enterprise again. We're talking about now depriving them of Airbnb. I think I've come up with an answer that can produce a lot of housing for Bermuda. But who do I give it to? That's the $64 question that would cause them to do what they should do with it. So I'm proposing for the first limited period of time, is to get it going with the independent members. Mm-hmm. Turn it over turn the system over. To look at a national plan about redevelopment of Bermuda itself, to make sure that there is a forward-going plan that has components so people can invest into things. I'm proposing to do something about housing. I'm proposing to do something about food. You can't sit back and simply say, well, it's too bad, prices keep going up, and we can do nothing about it. There are things we can do about it. We can do something about the shipping cost. We can do something about the cost and the market cost. But we can't do it by just simply saying, I disagree with you. We've got to investigate it, find out what's going on, put it before the public. This is people's livelihood. This is not where people have options. They don't have any options. But at least they should know why the cost is what the cost is and where the savings can be made. You can't add $1 or something to a cost of something overnight and just say, simply too bad, pay it. Or you go to the drugstore and you get something and they say, fine, your insurance covers so much, but then you got to co-pay as much as your insurance pays. But nobody asks the question is, what does this represent in terms of the good that you can buy in the States? You got to ship it to Bermuda. You've got to put it on a shelf in Bermuda. There is a track, let's call it a track cost. The track from the supplier in the States to the supplier in Bermuda to on the shelf. Track cost. What is that cost? And the thing about it is with technology today, you don't have to labor by having people running around.
My suggestion is we're going to venture into that direction. Then we come back after cup match.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
That's after cup match. We shall address the question, some of the questions and so forth, because I'm going to spend most of my time in the next month or two is really finalizing our plan for the independent members.
Okay.
Like I said, we're approaching about 20 now, and we've got other people giving thought to it. So we should be up to 30, 35, 36 people by the time the premier calls the election, whatever he's going to call it. So, we're making good progress and fun. But it's not easy. It's not easy. But we're making good progress, and we've got some very good people in the process. I think that's the important thing.
To be continued.
Thank you.
So, John, happy cup match to you. Have a safe one, enjoyable one. Bermuda, have a safe and enjoyable cup match. Anywhere else you might want to say to Bermuda before we end? You got 60 seconds.
I just want to say to Bermuda, look, we're all in this together. We need to hold hands. Don't kid around. Change the system. Make it work for you. It's not about me. It's for you. I just feel a compassion. As I said, Bermuda's been very good to me. You've been giving me the greatest opportunity. No country, no leader has been given so much blessing as I have. Therefore, I sense of giving something back to Bermuda. What I want to give back is the skills you've given me and the opportunity you've given me is to put them to work in Bermuda. That's why I've asked you to support independent members and the independent system that is not answerable to the party, but answerable to the public. Thank you.
Do you have a great day, Bermuda? Don't drink and drive is one of my #1 quotes I try to pass on. Don't drink and drive. If you're going to drive, if you're going to drink, get a designated driver. The life you save could be young. And remember, our roads are extremely challenging at these times. So maneuvering through our roads, as a matter of fact, on bikes, are challenging. So slow down, don't drink and drive, and have a safe cup match.